Yeah, we just want to welcome you and hope you find this informative, and please do ask questions. This grant program is one of the ones that is more typically groups or organizations that aren't necessarily applying for grants all the time. So no question, we don't think there are dumb questions at all. We're all learning together. So I'm going to turn it over to James to kick us off here.
Yeah, well, thank you, and welcome everyone. I am James Patterson, Senior Program Director at the Community Foundation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the neighborhood grants history. Excited to be able to talk about the history. It's been 29 years since the Community Foundation's been offering the neighborhood grants program. We'll go to this next slide. So in the beginning, back in 1990, there were approximately 15 neighborhood organizations. And in that same year, the Community Foundation received a $500,000 award from the Ford MacArthur Foundation to look at ways to support affordable housing. We'll go to the next slide. And so what we did is we convened housing organizations, people and organizations that were interested in the housing space and how do we make sure that we have affordable housing, and began to do some work on that. And during that time period, we awarded $250,000 to different neighborhood development organizations in that time to do different projects that they were doing. And also as a result of that grant and during that time period, the Rockford Area Affordable Housing Coalition formed through that effort. And so what was discovered at that time is that, neighbors and neighborhood organizations needed, small grants to be able to do different kinds of projects, small projects that could benefit their neighborhoods and bring them together and give them opportunities to develop leadership skills and be able to have the residents drive some of the community change in their community. So with that, we had these funds and we thought, okay, let's do a neighborhood grant program. This would be a program where you did not have to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization, as all of our other grant programs are. And we were one of the early ones to do something like this, to do a grassroots grant making program that was really for residents and not professional nonprofit organizations. So that first year, we gave 22 grants out, totaling $24,500. We'll go to the next slide. And since that time, 29 years later, so that's been some time now, there's as many as 90 neighborhood organizations, and we have granted almost $800,000 during that time period, 511 grants since 1995. So, and of course, there's been just a wide variety of grants. You can get pretty creative with the kinds of things that we do, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the real key is neighborhood improvement by and for the neighborhood residents themselves. And I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a little walkthrough of our system. And we're going to go over some of the things on this list here. And we could send you a copy of this PowerPoint when we're done, but you can click on these links and it'll take you to the pages that you need to go to. But my contact information is on here. I'm the Program and Administrative Associate. I'll be the person you call if you run into any issues or have any questions as you're going through your application.
2,500 grants.
You can go ahead and go to the next slide. So this very busy slide is just showing you where all of our resources are. So as you can see, there are so many different places that you could click on and get information about our grants. You can go to apply to a grant, that'll take you to our portal. You can go to resources, it'll take you to our grant seekers resources. It has a ton of information in there. If you go to receive, then it'll take you to our pages with all of the grants listed, and you can click and see when everything opens and closes. There's just so much information. So please utilize our website and just go on there, poke around for a little bit. But if you still have questions after you do that, please give me a call or send me an email. So this is when you clicked on the upper right-hand corner that said apply for a grant on our main website on CFNIL.org, this is where you're going to land. And this is just our grants portal. If you already have an organization account, please do not start a new one. If you are unsure if you have an organizational account, please contact me. If you need to be added, I can add you to it, but we don't want a bunch of duplicate accounts in there. It makes it really hard to track the history and for your organization to have all of the information in one place. So just shoot me a quick email. I'm usually pretty responsive. So when you are logging in, your email is case sensitive. So make sure that, if it's a capital in the middle of there or something, if you use that. And if you don't have an account, click create an account. And it says on here, the sooner the better. And that's true. Just that if you run into an issue, you could still have plenty of time to get some help. A lot of times people will start this on the last day, and good for them. That's not the way my brain works, but you would have plenty of time to ask questions if you do run into something. So you're not panicking at the last minute there.
Lisa, I see Susan waving her hand. Susan, you got a question
hello, Susan.
there.
Okay, good. All right. I want your email address because when I started my application, I didn't have my EIN number, and now I do, and now that won't let me update that.
Yes, and that is one of the things we're going to discuss is once your organizational account is started, you cannot change it. You have to contact me. So when we send this out, it'll have my email address on there.
Okay.
It's peppered throughout this presentation, but also when you go to the portal, your logon page, it's kind of hidden by this big red circle, but it is right under that big red circle.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we can go to the next slide. So here's where you would create a new account. And just as Susan was talking about, you have to make sure you get all the information right, because once you do this, you cannot change it yourself. So you want to start this in the name. Whoever starts this will be on the main account. We can change that if we need to, but it's usually best if the person who is going to be writing the grant is the person who starts this right here. We can move on to the next one. These are just some of the things that we went over just now. Just a reminder to make sure I remembered everything. The primary contact should be the applicant, and this is your dashboard where you can see any requests that you have open right now. If you're new to us, this will be the only one you have once you apply, but if you've applied for a few things or you have follow-up reports that need to be done, that's all going to be right here on this first page. And you can see any historical requests that you've made as well. So you can go back and look at last year's requests or community grants requests that you made earlier, well, last year, I guess that was the end of last year, and just kind of go over what you wrote. You kind of refreshes your memory on something. And then up on the top where it says apply, that's what you're going to click to apply. And just a little bit more about our application. You can see your organization history as well, not just the history of your grants, but you can see the entire organization's history up there of what they've applied for. We do have some information here where in our, I think we call them quick tips on our grants form, but you could watch a video on how to use the collaborator and how to apply for funding, and it'll give you a little walkthrough of how to do things. They're very helpful if you want to start by watching those, and that way you kind of know what you're getting into as you go on. You can preview the application, but anything you write in there will not be saved. Sometimes people just like to get a nice overview before they start doing too much. So you could preview that, but it won't be saved in there. And the application auto saves. There is a button at the bottom that says save. It is just there for your peace of mind. When we didn't have the button there, it causes panic because everybody was wondering if it's going to save, and we had a lot of calls. So we had the save button in there. It will alert you to any fields that need to be filled in. But if you stop in the middle of this application, you don't save it, don't worry, it's going to auto save for you. Okay, it looks like we got all of that. Yep, got all that as well. Okay, so there are a couple of features I want to draw your attention to here. We have copy previous answers, and we actually had, this was one of the questions that came up when you submitted your form. You can, if you're applying for a grant that's very similar to last year, or even if you don't, this can save you time. You click copy previous answers, it'll give you the option of what application you want to copy from, and then it will fill in anything that was common, and you can edit over this. So if you have a very similar program to last year, it'll carry that information over, and then you can go in there and edit it for anything that's changed for this year. It'll fill out a lot of the basic information about your organization in there as well. So it's just a nice time saver. We also have the collaborate button. And this is really nice, especially if you have more than one person working on an application at a time. Sometimes you have a finance person, or you just have a couple people in your neighborhood group or in your organization who are going to contribute to different parts of the application. You could add them as a collaborator and give them different permissions. So you can have them have permission just to see it. If you want somebody to check your work, they can edit if you give them that permission. And you can have it so they can submit it as well. Most people just have it so people can edit it when they're a collaborator, but you can make those decisions when you're in there. You can also see the question list over there on the side. And I think that is it for this slide here. The contact info populates from the initial user's account. But again, we can change that if we need to change it. And I'm going to throw this back to James now.
All right. One thing I would mention about the collaborator tool, it's
yes.
designed so that people can collaborate, but not at the same time, because it will overwrite the other person's work. So be cautious about that. But all right, so I get to talk a little bit about the program, what the purpose of the program is, some of the guidelines, who's eligible, what we don't fund, what we do fund, and some of that sort of thing. So I'll just jump right in to do that. The whole point of the program is to promote resident participation and leadership in neighborhood-based groups and organizations, and to be part of the change that they want to see in their community. And their community, we're really looking at the neighborhood itself. So not necessarily citywide, but more residentially focused. But it's to encourage and support the work of neighborhood-based groups. It's to invest in and build on the existing strengths and assets that are within our neighborhoods. And really, at its very core, is to promote civic pride in our community. And so we'll go to the next slide and talk about who is eligible to apply. So you could be a 501c3 organization, but you don't have to be. You can be an organized group carrying out a charitable purpose for the common good, like a neighborhood organization. But you do need to be an actual organization, and part of that is having the minimum of 3 leaders that are active and involved. Also having a checking account in your in the name of the organization. One thing that's important about grant dollars is it can't be spent to benefit any individual. It has to benefit the community in some fashion, or the neighborhood itself. So therefore, you know, that checking account really needs to not be in a person's name, but be in an organization's name. And then, of course, you need to be operated and organized in such a way that there is no discrimination. More on who is eligible to apply is on the next slide. You need to be located within Boone, Ogle, Stephenson, and Winnebago County. That just happens to be the Community Foundation in Northern Illinois service area. And you need to have a plan to be able to implement a project that will benefit residents within, as I mentioned before, the sort of that defined geographic area. That's what it's all about. So, and then you need to have the capacity to be able to complete that program by the end of the funded year. In this particular case, our final reports are due December 1st of that funded year. So if you were funded this year, it would be December 1st of 2024 that you would need to report and have that project complete by. And then you would need to be current on all final reports for any grants through the neighborhood grants program that you had received in the past. So we'll talk about what we fund on the next slide here. Here we go. So the real key, and you can see it's bolded there, it's resident led. We really want the residents to take leadership. It's not that there can't be organizations within the neighborhood that are involved, like say a church, maybe even a nonprofit organization, but we really want the residents to be the ones that are driving the activity. And again, building on existing neighborhood assets. We also encourage neighborhood partnerships. So, I mean, it could be two neighborhoods that are working together to do something that'll benefit both neighborhoods. And then the max grant size is 2,500. We'll go to the next slide here and talk about some examples. So again, you can get pretty creative. Just the main thing is that it's benefiting that defined area, that it's resident-led, that it creates opportunities for leadership development within the residents. Some pretty common ideas here are things like neighborhood cleanups, some crime prevention projects. Certainly beautification projects have been a very common one for a lot of good reasons. They're projects that usually can be completed in a fairly short period of time. And it also is a great opportunity to bring a lot of people together to do something that can be really engaging. We've certainly have funded seminars and workshops and things for resident leadership, newsletters, things like that to keep the residents of the neighborhood connected together, community gardens, just a lot of different things like that. But you can get pretty creative with it. So we'll go to the next slide and talk a little bit about these beautification projects, because we do fund a fair number of these. It is important that any permanent fixtures be installed on public property or common areas. So again, it can't benefit an individual directly. And the landscape projects must be permanent improvements, similar things. So, and also with them being permanent improvements is the idea that we really don't fund annuals, because annuals you have to replace every single year. We are more inclined to fund shrubs and permanent installations that will sustain themselves over time. You need to have a maintenance plan, as we know that especially early on with a new installation of plants, that they can be really in need of care, like water in particular, right? Until they really get established. And of course, we have droughts from time to time too, and to invest all that money into plants that end up dying because of a drought would be a terrible thing. And then thinking about it going forward too, this area is going to need to be maintained year after year as well. So, I mean, the plan could be something as simple as, well, we're going to have a date every spring that we get together and we go through and tidy things up and see what we need to do, and then in the fall, we're going to do the similar thing, and then we're going to have, certain times where we have watering that occurs. So things like that. But it's important to be able to take care of these beautified areas. And trees can only be planted on public or common areas. That's similar to the permanent fixtures. Tree is almost permanent. And so we wouldn't want that to just benefit one individual. And that's an IRS thing, by the way. That's not that we don't want individuals to be benefited. It's the IRS does not look at that as being charitable. So we'll go to the next slide. What we do not fund is landscaping private property, activities that primarily benefit non-resident-led organizations, including nonprofit or for-profit organizations. And it's not that they can't apply. We're not saying that a nonprofit or a church can't apply, but it's still got to be with a neighborhood organization or the residents in that neighborhood. That's the important thing. We won't fund religious purposes, but we definitely will fund faith-based organizations for non-religious purposes. So it is important to tell us how you're going to spend the money. And we have you do that through our proposal budget form that's embedded in the application. You're going to see on that form, and I'm going to show you in just a second, but you're going to see that there's a place for revenue on there and expenses, and those two should add up. You'll have lines where you can put in the different items that you're going to need to purchase, and you can combine like items in that case, because there's only so many lines that you can put in. We have a budget narrative as well, and that's more or less the budget form in a narrative format, in a written format, and I'll show you that. And then if you have items that are over $500 in those expenses, then we're going to ask you to have quotes for those. And we'll go to the next slide and I'll show you the examples. So this is what the proposal budget looks like. And you can see in this particular case that this is for beautification project. You can see there's two revenue items. One is just the request from the community foundation. And then the other is, some funds from the budget of the neighborhood organization, right? So that doesn't always have to be the case. A lot of times we're the only revenue source. Sometimes there's maybe a church that's pitched in some dollars, but just however that shapes out to help fund your project. The main thing is we're looking to see, do you have the money if we give you this grant to be able to complete the project? So if you look at the lower end here, you can see the expenses. And so you've got 5 lines for that. And again, that's why you might need to combine sometimes different items, but you'll see that these are typical types of beautification expenses. Would be soil preparation materials, shrubs, perennials, mulch, and they even have incidentals. We'll go to the next slide and I'll show you how the narrative supports that. So here you can see that it's literally just sort of written out how it is. And the other thing is that the narrative is helpful for is you can give a little bit more detail. The idea with the budget form is so you can just survey it very quickly and have a good idea what the money's being spent on. And here's where you can get into a little bit more detail. And as you can see, like from expense 1 here for the soil preparation materials, they've got that down to the 50 cents, which is great. It might not be quite that precise, but certainly we want you to have researched it. And in this particular case, they're showing us that they're purchasing 15 bags of peat moss at $5.30 a piece, and that's how they come up with this $79.50. And then I also want to point out the one at the bottom, expense number 5 for incidentals. And if you remember from the budget form, that was $100, so a fairly small amount. We wouldn't want that type of a line item to be very large, but we do understand that peat moss can go up by the time you are able to implement the program. And so you might need a little bit of extra funds to cover some unexpected expenses. We'll go to the next slide. And as mentioned before, there are reporting requirements. We need to, especially with non-501c3 organizations, we have to ensure that dollars are spent charitably. And so that's what the reporting is all about. You would tell us in the report how the program was implemented, the project was implemented, anything that changed from the original concept from the album, the application, and then that would be due by December 1st, as I mentioned, of the funded year. And you would use the Community Foundation's grants portal to submit online to do that. We always want you to keep us in the loop for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes because things maybe don't go as planned, right? There are times where you thought you were going to be able to do one particular thing, or you were going to be able to obtain certain supplies, maybe for an example, but turns out you can't. Maybe there's a really terrible backlogs. We experienced a lot of that during COVID, right? There was a lot of supply chain issues and so on. But there could be some reason why you can't implement the program in the way that you thought you were going to be able to. And generally that's fine. Just get in touch with us and we can do what we call a grant amendment. We can make that change so that we're not surprised when we get the final report. Sometimes it may take a little longer for you to be able to finish the project or get all the information together that you need to be able to complete the reporting. And so you can reach out to us and we can oftentimes give you an extension if necessary. And then sometimes it just turns out that you're not able to implement the program for any number of different reasons, not necessarily because you've done anything wrong or anything of that nature, but just there are things that will come up that don't allow you to be able to do that. That's not, it is something that happens from time to time, and we don't look at that as a black mark against your organization, but it's really, really important to communicate with us about that and let us know and get those funds back to us and complete your report. So that you'll be in good standing for the next year when you have another idea that you'd like to do. And then last but not least, and Jennifer will talk about this more, but whenever you have events going on that are related to your project or there are promotional opportunities, we certainly want to hear about the good, fun stuff too, right? It's not just only when bad things happen, so to speak, but just keep us in a loop. That's always a great idea. And we'll go to the next slide and look at the timeline here. So the application is currently open. It's been open since the 1st, and it is going to stay open until April 1st at 5 p.m. when we will shut that down. And then there will be a process in between that lasts a couple of months here, where we have a committee that will review the applications, and they're a committee of community members, and they will determine who will receive funds and in what amounts they will receive funds. Typically, we don't have as many dollars as we have requests, so it does have to be sort of a competitive, selective process. But then we do have a reception May 30th at 5:30 to celebrate everybody who received these grants and be able to learn a little bit more about what they're going to do, and the other organizations can learn about the other projects that are going on. It's always fun. We usually do it in our backyard if weather permitting, and it's just a fun event. So, and as I mentioned before, the reports are due December 2nd of 2024. It's December 2nd, I think, because that must be a Monday, right? Generally speaking, it's the beginning of December. So we'll go to the next slide, and we'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Awesome. So should you receive the awarded a neighborhood grant, we do ask that you promote the project that you're doing, which is smart to do just anyway, but we also ask that you promote the support that you receive from the Community Foundation. Every year, we started doing this about 4 years ago, but we make these yard signs. Here's one from 2021, that every recipient receives a yard sign. And if it's appropriate, your projects are not always appropriate to use as a yard sign, but if it is, you can use that to post and show how proud you are for getting a grant for that project. You are welcome to do a press release. We will send out a press release about all of the recipients, but we encourage you to write a press release to make the community even more aware of the good work that you are doing. We can provide you with a press release template and as well as a media contact list. And I am here to help compose a press release, edit, whatever help you might need in that regard, or even just to bounce ideas off of me. I'm happy to do that. We love to do site visits, or AKA grown-up field trips. We enjoy working. We have a beautiful office to come to every day, but it's a lot of fun to get out and see the work in action. And neighborhood grants are some of the most fun because you all are so excited about your projects, and they often happen in all corners of our service area. So it's really fun to get out and see them. And so, like, if you have a cleanup day, if you have a ribbon cutting, anything like that, please do invite us. We would love to, if we're able. Not promise that we will attend, but we would love to attend if we are able to. Social media, obviously, if your group is on the web, if you're online, social media is a great place to get the word out about your grant, but even more importantly, about the project that you're doing, the good work that your group is doing. The Community Foundation is on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. You're no longer on Twitter, but you can tag us on those platforms and we'll share your good news. Particularly, like, if you make a Facebook event, add us as a co-host, then we'll accept that, and it shows up for all of our followers too. So we just want to help amplify your message through those channels too. And then finally, if your awarded program is something that includes a t-shirt or like a physical program, like a bulletin is a church word, but a program, you know what I'm saying? Or posters to advertise if it's an event or a block party, whatever that is. That's another place that you can put a little blurb about support from the Community Foundation, and we will provide you with copies of our logo and language if you need it, whatever you need to make that easy for you. The most important thing is just to relax, focus on doing the work of your project. Publicizing your grant should not be a matter of stress for you. We are here to support your efforts and really help you be successful and get the good word out there to even more people. So this is my contact information, as I said, for reviewing, helping write, whatever, any sort of communication about your project. I'm happy to help with that. We love talking with grantees and helping you do your work. So that's our work, is to help you do yours and do it well. So that's me. And here is all of our contact information for the various aspects of our programs here, both email and phone numbers. And finally, we will ask if there are any questions from the group in attendance. Please feel free to unmute yourself and just ask it or type it in the chat, whatever you'd like to do. Susan, go right ahead.
I started a senior get together at my church a year ago, and we have a really active group. We do all kinds of things. Mostly, well, I shouldn't say mostly we eat, but mostly food is involved in almost every event we have. We meet weekly, and what we would like to do is to get more seniors involved, but the seniors that we have coming are from all over the area. They're from all over different parts of Rockford. So it isn't a specifically neighborhood event. It's not a specifically neighborhood group, but so I'm trying to figure out if this is something that is going to work for us. Barb Chidley has been working with us and has been great, to help us get discounted tickets to go places and things like that. So, but we would like to have more seniors involved in it. So, could like producing signs that say, come to Seniors on the Creek. We're having a great time. That would work. Okay. And it isn't a problem if we have people from all over the city coming.
Well, I would say that it wouldn't be a higher priority. Let's say it that way, because what we're really going to be looking for are those organizations or projects that really do engage residents within a defined area.
I understand that.
So,
yeah.
But having said that, we do have our community grants program that the application will open in June this year.
Okay.
And something like that would certainly fit that grant program.
Okay.
Although you would need to be a 501c3 or work through a 501c3, such as a church.
Okay. All right. Well, let me take that back to the group, and everything we do by group discussion and decision making. So,
well, sounds like a really neat group.
It's wonderful. I was actually on television a few weeks ago.
Nice.
I know you probably noticed me. You probably saw me. I was on that State Line.
Oh, yeah. Good Morning State Line.
Good
yeah,
day,
but it was
Line.
it was in the evening with Michelle, whatever her name is,
Yeah.
Michelle something or other. But I was on the Friday, so little did I know that I was going to be doing an air fry event.
Yes. I got to do that once, Susan. It was amazing. It was so fun.
What did you get to cook?
Oh, what was it? It was like these little like pizza things.
Okay.
So did them on like little tortillas and.
Oh, all right. Well,
it was fun.
It was fun. Yes, we got to do green beans.
Oh, well, I like mine better.
I think I would too. Although the green beans were great. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the suggestion.
I would also think too, if they're like your church is, I assume your church is located in a neighborhood. So, if there's some particular something that's inviting, that's collaborative with a nearby neighborhood group, or if someone's coming to speak about something like a service that's available, there are ways to make this work. But yes, what James said is also accurate, right? Like we look for things that are neighborhood resident led.
Right. I mean, for example, if the church and the seniors there were doing something to improve the neighborhood and working with the residents in the neighborhood, well, that would be pretty cool.
Right.
And fit.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. We have wanted to reach out to the neighborhood and get more people involved, but that's another whole piece. So thank you.
Awesome. I see a question or
yeah.
Pastor Ruby Martin made a comment in the chat. We have a backpack giveaway going on 15 years. We need help for backpack giveaway to help beautify Black Hawk Park. We need help. This sounds like both of those things sound like, particularly if they're if it's for your church, for the people who live in the community around the church, your parish, then this would be a good fit.
And especially if it engages the residents and not just
Absolutely.
it really should be doing with and for, or
Right.
doing with rather than for
Right.
people. Now,
Yep.
if you are doing for, and if you're a church, you would, again, the community grants program might be a place for you to look into in June.
I have a question. Hi, Alina here from Embrace Living
Alina.
Community.
Yeah, hello.
Hi, James and Lisa. I haven't had a chance to meet Jennifer, I think. So we are an organization, and we have different communities, and some of our communities are in the Rockport area, and those are kind of a neighborhood within, because two communities, one next to the other. And my question is, you say resident-led. The activities have to be resident-led, or you can have someone coming and bringing an activity in the community that residents participate in?
It's a great question. And there's I'm going to call it sort of a sliding scale here a little bit. I mean, you want the residents to be leading as much as possible. So if there's an activity that's being brought into the neighborhood, for an example, how could those residents be part of driving that activity? Could they be taught to do different aspects of it and be part of helping plan and encouraging others to come and so on and so forth? So we say that, like with this program and our youth program, it's kind of like it needs to be as neighborhood-led, resident-led as possible under the circumstances. And there might be certain areas where maybe the residents aren't quite as engaged yet and maybe need a little bit more of a boost. But we really are trying to give those residents an opportunity to develop leadership skills and pride in their place.
Thank you. And can you apply, or can you submit more than one applications?
You can.
Okay. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, that's the short answer. Yeah, you can.
You can.
I would say also, if the program that you're bringing in is, like James said, that some neighborhoods, you're really trying to develop the leadership. So if the program is something that is like giving folks leadership skills, right? It's an educational program about how to get to know your neighbors or the crime prevention topics. That's another thing that, some neighborhoods have a lot of concern about. So they're bringing in some learning about Neighborhood Watch or, something like that. That's like leading to them being able to lead, if that makes sense. That it's part of that sliding scale, right? The degrees of engagement.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is the more engaged the residents are, the better your chances of being a good fit.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Janine is waving, I see, or someone in the background.
Stephanie's back there waving.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was one of the students. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I said hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm just looking at the questions that were submitted. Let's see. Okay, grants open to everyone or only nonprofits. We've talked about that. Criteria, we've talked about that. Technical support available, absolutely. Technical support is, you are seeing us. Here we are the technical support. If you're talking about something else in regards to technical support, reach out and let us know. We can be more helpful. We received a grant last year. Can we reapply for the same type of activity and use most of the previous application? Yes, you can copy from past applications. What qualifies for beautification? We've talked a lot about that. Okay. Would the grant involve our neighborhood or parks? Will we have a list of what we can ask for, meaning community parks, restoring kiosks, mulching dead trees and parks, flowers? So we're not going to give you a list to tell you what you should do, but all of those things that were in that list are certainly things that would work for this grant program. So, so
Yeah,
yes,
and
it might be a church involved in a neighborhood in a park that's adjacent to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Mhm.
park would be public property, so
Right.
that fits. I mean, if it was on the church property, that wouldn't fit. If it was on a residence property, that wouldn't fit. But yeah,
Right.
absolutely,
Park.
the public areas for sure.
Yeah.
And Shiraz just asked, can we do something similar to what we did last year, like a neighborhood block party?
Mhm.
We love it when people throw parties. Please invite us. Like, so absolutely, you can throw. That's something we fund quite often.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Yes, Shiraz, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Well, I'll just give a plug to say I was a little intimidated when I first applied, but as soon as I talked to everybody, I relaxed. So I would encourage people who haven't applied before to not hesitate to reach out with questions to the folks at CFNIL. But my question also was, I was thinking actually this year, I don't know if we'll do the block party again, but we are thinking of some beautification, and the parking lot behind us belongs to the city. So would that be considered a public property if we decided to apply for some funds to put in maybe even some landscaping that's more permanent, not annual?
Yes.
Maybe a way to get some wrap around the utility box, which looks horrible. You know, things like that.
Yes.
We could.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Short answer again, but yes, you definitely could do
Yes.
that. But
All right.
yeah. Can
And
you vouch for
often-
us
go
the
ahead.
reception being fun, by the way, since you were
Okay.
there last year?
Well, the reception was also a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Yes. And their building is beautiful. The gardens are beautiful. The staff is wonderful. And the reception was a lot of fun. And was nice to be there and actually meet people, other people doing wonderful things. So
Yeah.
that was
Mhm.
the big deal. And thank you, Janine, for saying you loved the block party. We're trying to see if we can maybe do it as part of, and that may be another question. You know, there is a Midtown District board, but I think they are more a business district. But might they, if they, because for our little volunteer organization run by 10 people, that block party it took over our lives for about 6
I bet it
months,
did.
you know? So we
Yeah.
are thinking we are glad to do it, but I think maybe we do it with more leadership from more people in that neighborhood. But to be honest, the people that are more accessible are the people who run businesses there rather than the residents. So would that work if they put
Yeah,
together an application and we were part of it?
that's I don't want to call it an exception. That's a little shade of where we would sort of look at that district as being kind of a neighborhood organization.
Right.
It's just a little different in that it's the businesses, but the businesses are invested in that location. And so that's why it could slip in as,
Okay.
you know, something that could be eligible.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, because they are invested. I mean, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And Shiraz, I don't see that he is on the call right now, but the executive director of the Midtown District Association did register for this webinar. So clearly they're looking and thinking about it.
Great.
So,
And we'll send them this recording and they'll see your
Yeah.
question, hopefully.
yep. Yeah,
Great, yes.
exactly.
Yeah, we have a new director, Keith Young, who actually was
Oh.
one of the committee for our last year's block party.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's who it is.
That's
So who
great.
registered?
Perfect.
So.
All right. Good. I'm glad he's going to watch. Okay.
Yep. All right. I'm going to drop 2 links into the chat. One of them is the link, and you'll get these also when we send out all the slides and everything. And if you registered for this webinar, you've already been to the Neighborhood Grants webpage. That's that first link there. I've also dropped in the link to our community grants page, which is another program that James mentioned a few times. It's our largest and broadest grant program. It is exclusively for 501c3 nonprofits, so entities that are organized in that way. Typically, the asks. Go ahead.
I was just going to say also, faith-based organizations can apply too, even if they don't have a 501c3.
Yes.
So
yeah. But they're typically larger asks for established programs. So some of the work that you're talking about tonight would apply for that too. So, and that application opens in June and closes in August. All
Yep,
right.
August
Well,
15th.
August
I
15th.
have one more question.
Sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
Susan.
That's okay. One of my other ideas was to have, maybe to get some of the more neighborhood seniors involved, was to have like an ice cream social in our parking lot of the church, and just open it up to the neighbors and say, come on down, maybe do hot dogs on the grill and ice cream and whatever. Would that be something we could apply for? Or would that be
Again,
better underneath the community grants?
it might be okay under community grants. And I think, the twist here would be is if you had people in the neighborhood that were going to help you do that, right? So that they were part of planning it, part of actually, working it or running it or whatever, to the
Right.
extent that they were.
Right.
So again, that's sort of that sliding scale where,
Right.
depending on how involved they are.
Okay. Well, because we do have a couple of people in the neighborhood there that that are involved with the group, and
Awesome.
so
And
yeah.
that might be enough.
Okay. All right.
And
okay.
if you've been talking with Barb too, she will know who I use the word indigenous, which sounds a little lofty, but like the leaders who are there in your proximity, she will know who those people are if they're not already involved. So
okay. All righty.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Welcome.
All right. I think James and Lisa and I will hang out for just a couple more minutes if there's any final questions, but otherwise, thank you. Good luck. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Can I say something, Jennifer, before you log everyone out? I was
Yes.
just going to say, that I think for our block party, what we realized is that having people might give input from the neighborhood in different ways. Like everyone could not attend all the meetings, but they helped us publicize things and they shared information with the people they knew, and and were supportive in a variety of ways. And I think that was okay, right, James?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even
that is a way for them to engage.
Right. Because we discovered that it was kind of unrealistic to expect, especially the people who own businesses in the neighborhood, to come to all the planning meetings. They just couldn't. So there were different ways in which they engaged, but people really appreciated the party.
I
That's all I wanted to say.
A question. So what I'm hearing that you're looking for is to, as you've said, make the residents more engaged and not do for them, but have them participate in the activity. So I'm the grant writer. So I've got to talk with the people that want the grant. So I'm trying to run some ideas through my head. So let's say it's a neighborhood block party / community watch that we're looking to put together. So what if you have, say, there are some people who maybe they want to bake a cake and donate the cake to the block party. And how do you ask people to, show the leadership skills, but not give them any money? If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. I think it's, meeting them where they are, having them be part of it in the way that they can and want to be, and have the skill to be. But I mean, I think if they're doing some work in terms of planning and putting certain aspects of it together and so on, that will lead to further engagement down the road.
And we also don't want to seem like you can't do something for the residents with your activity, but we do want the residents to be engaged in that activity. So I think I remember your grant from last year for Save Our Summers. Is
Yes,
that what it is?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I remember they offered some free haircuts for the kids. They had
Mhm.
some other activities going on for the residents, but it was residents that were leading the group and planning the activities. So there's we don't want to make it sound like you can't do something for the residents or the neighborhood, but what the primary thing is that the residents are the ones who are doing it.
Okay.
And not just receiving services from an organization that's not really part of the neighborhood.
That's a good
Okay.
point.
Thank you. Thank you both.